Yo, 1 2 1 2 1 2. We are live. This is the Synth Society Summit 2021. It's the second annual, as a matter of fact, and this is hosted by the SoCal Synth Society and also Colorado Modular Synth Society. So yeah, if you're here, you know it's Saturday, you know it's May 22nd, you know it's 5 p.m. Pacific, and this is the Modbap session. We got guest Ski Beatz in the glorious band, Ctrlr, lead architect Pacific, and this is the Modbap session. Mute those YouTube guest Ski Beatz. So we'll be back. Yeah. So yeah, we got Ski Beatz, Ben the Glorious Bastard, Voltage Controller, Ollie the Architect, Kypski, myself, BboyTech as the moderator, and we're gonna get started right now with a little performance from Sventa. So let's get into it, then we're gonna come back and have some conversation. Yo, everybody. Bring you all off mute.
Yep.
Yeah. Yo, welcome to this little outing. We're just gonna get into some conversation and see what we can bring up. I just leave us up for a second to say what's up to everybody. We got Ski Beatz, Ben the Glorious Bastard, Kypski, Ali the Architect, and Voltage Controller, and myself, BboyTech. And yo, we're just gonna come together and talk about some stuff. I want to get to let's start it off with that one question that was here, and it's pretty simple. I think it was a surgeon. Who was it that said that? Question for the panel. What makes it Modbap beyond making hip hop and incorporate modular? Anybody want to take that on?
I mean, like I said in the chat, you all hear me, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm not much of an overthinker type of person, but for me that was kind of, hip hop, modular, and I think I'm answering the question, but I think you and Shiro should answer because you came up with the word, right?
Yeah.
But
so
on my end, I would just say that's my take, right? The Modbap is more like a pun on boom bap rather than a restriction or description. I think it's just pretty much modular and hip hop, right?
That's really what it comes down to. For me, is if you're making hip hop and you kind of know the aesthetic of hip hop and you start to incorporate modular and you're keeping that hip hop aesthetic, it's Modbap. You know what I mean? And really for me, it's not only boom bap kind of stylings. I mean, because when I listen to, say, Ali the Architect, I mean, I'm hearing trap all up and through there. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, it's really about incorporating modular into your hip hop production techniques.
And I would say the thing that would be different that we're adding to hip hop, traditional hip hop production, is getting off the grid. So like being able to excuse me, to keep the hip hop element of like structure of rhythm, from beats, but then like what you express over those beats isn't stuck on the grid. We have a lot of different generations of hip hop to pull from, from boom bap to trap and all points in between. So yeah, I just think it's a good way to get off the grid and to evolve hip hop production, because it's been stagnant for years.
That's real. Voltage.
Yo, Ali, you're muted.
We talked about it. Yeah, go ahead, Ali.
Yeah, I think it gives you a way to create your own style without being, held down by licensing issues and stuff like that. You can just create your own and, come up with your own samples and your own things and move forward from there. And new sonic, sonic soundscapes, new sounds and stuff like that are different from, just the general stuff that we used to sample back in the day. I think that's, what it really brings up.
Yeah, I really agree with that, because that is also the whole reason why I started doing the Syntablism thing and started with modular as a whole, to get away from sampling vinyl records, which I was doing for years and years and years, and released many albums by doing that, and also faced the challenges of releasing hip hop inspired tracks with a lot of samples in them, the legal stuff, and with the Syntablism and with the modular, I could just create sounds from scratch and scratch them at the same time, which was, to me, was mind blowing.
I would like to say something about sampling. Definitely, hip hop is built on vinyl culture. So part of hip hop production is sampling, and you should never let legalities get in the way of artistic expression.
Yeah, true.
Because then we wouldn't have Pete Rock, we wouldn't have,
of course,
Professor. So I think balance is key.
Yeah, it was also you're really right about that, and it's more, for me, it was like a new artistic phase rather than quitting sampling because I was fed up with the legal issues. I've released so much music with chopping samples, and with the modular thing, I really felt it was time for something new and fresh. And now I'm using samples again in my modular rig, so they're back.
Yeah, I think the modular, just like taking the hip hop, my hip hop background, like that's what I make. So just getting into modular, I just wanted to be able to create my own kind of sounds and just express myself without using somebody else's like pre-built VSTs and stuff like that. Like that's what really brought me into it, and kind of like grounded me into it, because I can now scope this stuff like, and it's way easier for me with like hands-on than like pushing with the mouse and the keyboard and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would like to add one more thing about
barely hear you. If you could bring your volume up just a bit.
Who's that?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, you know what? I want to say, I got brought into the whole Modbap thing through Corey and Voltage Control, and it was just wow. You know what I'm saying? When I saw like you guys like, using these hip hop drums, but using these synthesizers, not just regular keyboard synthesizers, but things that you're plugging up with all these incredible different types of timbres that I wasn't used to hearing in hip hop. That definitely attracted me to the whole, before I even knew it was Modbap, I just knew I wanted to put some beats to some shit like that. You feel me?
Pretty much.
Right. Yeah, that's what's up.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and for me, it was about pushing the envelope a little bit. Like I noticed that even with my love for hip hop and some of my favorite groups were not making a lot of music, and it just kind of felt like there was a lot of new things happening, but not too much that was exciting me. You know what I mean? So I wanted to kind of see how we could push it into the future and still, bring that history along with us. And so that was I literally was kind of conscious about, I want to do hip hop, but I want to push the envelope. And so that was really what was a big deal for me. And then to what Kypski is saying, I found that I didn't have that thing hanging over my head where, a lot of times you make dope beats, and I'm always concerned, like, damn, you right soon as you make some of your dopest stuff, you hear about somebody suing Dilla's estate 10 years later. You like see that kind of shit right there, though?
No, it's true.
Yeah.
And another thing for making original music, because I like doing both, is when you rely strictly on sampling, it's like with years and years of sampling, we're losing a generation of current music.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree with Ali was saying as far as like making original music is very important, because if you teleport 10, 20 years from now, it's like, what did 2020 sound like? It's like if it's all about sampling, it would only sound like the 70s to the early 80s, so we need to carve out what now sounds like as well.
That's definitely a good point. That's what's up. So I want to ask too, there's somebody that, and when we did, Ali was there, Shiro, you and I and Aaron were on the panel, and somebody asked then, what are the tools for Modbap? And I think somebody's asking right now, what are the standout modules for Modbap? And I don't know that I had a real answer for that, besides like the same answer would be whatever the tools are for hip hop, just kind of, but then the landscape of Eurorack is so vast. Like, what I mean? It's just like, you all of us could take the same record and flip it, and we won't flip it the same. Partly because in hip hop, you want to flip stuff differently from the last person. But it's like when I could give you my rack and we could trade racks, and we won't sound the same, because there's something about Eurorack that's just so vast, and the approach for everybody is a little different. So
yeah,
I don't know. What do y'all think some of the standout modules might be, or even just some of the ones that y'all been leaning on lately?
That's not a fair question for you to ask.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, because it's like you can it's like you need a basic building block of modules to come out with a sound that you can, say, okay, yeah, this sounds really good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think you picking your chain is your personality going into, your music. What you think, what stands out to you. It could be the styling. I mean, because once we think about it, like an oscillator is an oscillator. Like no matter what way you twist it, what I'm saying? It's an oscillator. So
right.
I mean, some of them sound different. Like then you got things like like kind of like rings and pluck and stuff like that. The Carpla Strong with different like algorithms and stuff like that. I mean, that's the only way you're gonna get a different like oscillator. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then from there, it's about how your mind works and you wired it up. Really.
Yeah,
when make a melody.
Yeah. When I first started, I had to kind of like obviously learn the foundations. VCA, envelopes, filters, yada yada yada. But once I got the basic foundation of what modulars, did, then I could kind of like map out what I wanted it to do. So then I started picking modulars like, okay, I'm more melodic based. So let me find some quantizers or some things that can create some chords or something that could give me more different types of timbres opposed to just, subtractive. Let me get into some FM. Let me get into some, some wave scanning type of shit. You feel me?
Yeah,
That's real, actually. Yeah, because then you can start to carve out some things. And then too, there's something I found. I was telling somebody, when it comes to my beats, like when I'm programming beats, there's sometimes it's intrinsic almost for me to, like I'm trying to channel the South Bronx from you know what I'm saying? But then when it comes to melodies and bass lines, it's like I intrinsically sort of channel Uma, Dilla, Q-Tip, and that kind of thing. And so when you start thinking about the stylings of it, you can start to put together a chain of things that gets you to that place. You know what I mean? Like you were saying, Ski, with, chordal type of stuff and melodic stuff and things that make chords and, you know what I mean? Start filtering stuff down. But it really you definitely do have to start with the basics and kind of understand the foundation. Then after that, it's about pouring yourself into it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And having your own plan to like an idea or a plan for what you want to produce. What is it exactly that you want to produce?
Yeah.
If you have some kind of idea about that, then you can start looking for the right modules and building your own system. But for example, if you would say like these 4 modules are Modbap modules. So if you get these 4 modules, then you're good to go to make Modbap. That might be a bit
misleading, I think.
Yeah,
because I think you can make any kind of music with any kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
I think building your rig is part of the process in the same way that any part of making the beat. You see what I mean? Like the same way you can't say, can you give me a bass line and a breakbeat and a line, like it's the same when people ask what's a module for hip hop. I'm like, this is step 1 of the process. You should appreciate it. Like which oscillator you're gonna pick is the same way, like which kick are you gonna pick for your beat, right? So the same way I don't have an answer which snare should you pick for your next South Bronx beat to Corey.
right.
I don't have much more answers when it comes down to which oscillator or envelope or VCA you should buy if you want to do a New Orleans trap beats a la Manny Fresh, right? Like for me, all these questions, it's you. That's the whole point of what we do.
Yeah, exactly. We can create a sonic signature because we're not bound by using a fixed architecture machine like a SP1200 or MPC or whatever. So it's like, in essence, we're building our own, and then it gets even deeper. Like when we build a patch, it's almost like making an instrument every time we approach a song.
That's real. Yeah. You know what? To voltage controller, you said something before, and you just mentioned the sonic signature. There was a point when we transition from one piece of hardware to another hardware, I may get stuff in through here. At one time you said like, yo, it don't matter what piece of gear you get, you still sound like Corey.
Yeah, true indeed. True indeed.
Right.
So I think there's something to that. You know what I mean? Like I think it's something we said before. Like if you're a dope hip hop producer, you could be a dope Modbap producer because it's just a matter of incorporating that stuff, synthesis and stuff.
Right. And learning how to add that into your setup and, you know, connect that to what you were already doing and let it make you grow. You know what I mean? Because really modular made me realize that I could do things other than Modbap. I could do dance. I could do whatever. I could, you know, because, you know, a lot of the times, like when we just on the MPC or like, you know, some of our classic tools, you know what I'm saying? We're starting with drums or whatever. We're not starting with a melody or something else. And with this, I find myself a lot of the time starting with a melody, and that melody doesn't always end up something that needs some hip hop drums. It might need a 4 to the floor. It might need
they need no drum.
You know what I mean?
That's the other thing. Sometimes it's just good, like in that ambient space.
Right. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And then even think about hip hop now. A lot of the hip hop now has no drums. You know, so like even traditional hip hop is like kind of going through an ambient phase.
Word.
Yeah. It's like the drumless, using the drums from the sample for the drums, pretty much.
Yeah.
Somebody's asking what, and I think this is an interesting question, just because when you talk about the sort of the technical stuff, I mean, it's a lot of vibe in Modbap and in hip hop. But when you start talking about some of the technical stuff, I know a lot of people want to know what kind of sequencers does everybody use. Somebody asked the question. For me personally, I've tried a lot of sequencers in the rack, and some of them work out well for me, and a lot of them don't work out well for me. And I think mostly it comes down to because when I program my drums, I like to be a little more hands-on, and I don't like to make a algorithm to make the drums, although it's fun to play with that. It's you know what I'm saying? But I definitely like to, you know, that programming has to come through me into the machine. Can't hear you, Ali.
My bad. I was saying I'll dabble with it and play with it sometimes, but yeah, 95% of all of my drums are programmed in the MPC. Like it's just the way I like to do it, the way I'm used to doing it. And you know, I even use the MPC for sequencing most of my stuff on the modular because it's just the workflow that I know like the back of my hand. So it's like if it's not broke, why fix it? You know what I mean?
This is why we call it Modbap, baby. You know what I'm saying? We gotta have that MPC on the side. What the fuck?
Yeah,
you gotta have that.
Straight up.
You know what? My bad. I mess around with the, you know, sometimes I mess around with the little modular sequences, but they be too on the grid, too tight. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you want to do some 4 on the floor stuff, I get it. Some dance stuff, whatever. But for Modbap, that's like, nah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah,
you don't want to mess around with that.
The only thing
you need some elements that's off the grid. The drums got to be off the grid.
Loose. Some things got to be loose.
Yeah, ER101 is the only thing that I've been able to make swing for me. You know what I mean? Because there's no time, there's no grid on that. You give each note its length and time. So by doing that, you can knock off the swing and like have the exact swing. But then again, you're sitting there programming it like every note, and you know sometimes it's fun, but sometimes like you just don't want to sit there and program. So you want
to feel it out.
You know, feel it out. That's what gives it that soul. That's what gives it. I mean, like that's what makes it Modbap. I feel like you putting your soul in it, like you know.
Yeah, that's what I discovered lately about the Pulsar 23 drum synth. For me, it was really great. Like CV, it doesn't have a sequencer. It has CV loopers. So everything, I can just program a beat on the fly on the Pulsar, and it will. Yeah, everything is kind of. It's not. There's no grid, so it's by definition it's off the grid, and just like the precise, like really my own personal timing is being recorded at that moment in those CV loopers. So I discovered I could make really a lot of Modbap beats on the Pulsar. 23, which is a lot of fun. And the fact that there's no grid or step sequencer in there is really, I really love that. It's an advantage.
I think, there's a lot to that. I think kind of, mixing and matching and having both things. People are naming different sequencers out there that you can make swing, like the vector sequencer, or they're saying marbles. I know CV Dope uses marbles a lot. But you know what? There is something, and I can remember programming beats and using a lot of probability and chance and different kinds of stuff like that, just to almost make a generative beat. Like, it's programmed at first, but then using certain dropouts and chance and probability to kind of create almost this, because we're gonna make a drum loop, it's gonna loop, right? But it's kind of dope sometimes to add a little probability in there to kind of drop some things out, and especially if you're doing like a Modbap set, sometimes you kind of want things to vary a little more. So that's fun, but I don't find myself doing that a whole ton. It really is about, I saw this documentary where this dude was saying he plays bass, but his father was one of the bass players for Motown back in the day, in the heyday of Motown. And his father used to be like, yeah, you know how to play, but now you got to put something on it. And I feel like that's what we're doing with Modbap. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we could probably all program things really rigid, but it's about putting ourselves into it. And that's what kind of brings it to life. That's what's up with it.
You know what I like? I like the thing that I like about the drums in Modbap is the drums is basically, for me, is the foundation. And I can get super random, obviously, with all the other elements that surround it, but I need something that's gonna stay grounded. You know what I mean? I don't want everything to be all over the place. But I can have melodies doing a million different things, but as long as they, it got that, whatever that is, you know what I'm saying? How do you explain that? Boom.
Right.
I feel like in Modbap more than any ever, right? It's all about the one. Like, it's even, you see what I mean? Like, this is the apex of that kind of theory, right? Like it's all about the one. You get the one, and everything else can, kind of explode in each direction and ways and modulations.
Facts.
As long as we get the one, I think we're good, right?
Yep. I agree with that. And I wanted to mention something. I was Shiro was telling somebody about this the other day. Me and Shiro was doing a show. We were opening up for J Electronica. What was the spot, Shiro?
The Troubadour.
So it was interesting. We both had our setups, the drum machine and the Euro rack, right? And obviously, Modbap is still growing, and for all intents and purposes, in some situations, depending on who you're talking to, it's in its infancy stages, right? So Shiro met me in the alley, so I know which back door to go into, and I got my Euro rack under my arm and my drum machine and we come in there, and Shiro's bringing his Euro rack joint in, and the sound man's like, what y'all gonna do with those? It's like, well, yeah, it's a part of our set. He's like, yeah, you do what you
ain't got no room.
We ain't no room for that.
So like right on the spot. So we had to augment what we was planning on doing. But the thing is, it still sounded like what it was gonna sound like. It just wasn't as embellished. You know what I'm saying? And it's just something to that, like how you can remove those elements and still have banging beats and still have a full set and stuff. So it's something to that idea. Like, how are y'all capturing all of the melodics and those different things? We all use different drum machines, sampled or audio tracks and different stuff like that. How we doing that?
All of the above, baby.
All of the above. It just depends on the situation, really. If I'm going out to play a set and say I got some drums on my or some horns that are playing from my virus or something, I don't want to bring my virus for some horns, so I'm gonna just sample it in to the MPC most of the time, because on the MPC I know it's there. Boom, boom, bam. Wash your hands, it's done. Now, on another note, you might sample it into the Euro rack just to, give it some more pizzazz, chop it up, or, run it through some effects or something. But then you got to have a for sure setup. You know, you need a signal path carved out for that one thing to make sure it doesn't change, because anything changes with that, then your sample's out of whack, and you know what I mean? So I usually will go with the surefire way, just record it into my MPC if I really need it, you know?
But you know what, Ali, well, voltage controller too, but I'm saying I've seen Ali at performances where, you know, you got your notes and you're using the voltage block to go, like when you go to a different beat, you hit a button on the voltage block and it goes to a whole nother thing. It's like a preset. You hit it, you use voltage block like a preset joint, and you keep control really well over the Eurorack portion of the set that way. How'd you like kind of come up with thinking about how to approach that? Did that take some figuring out when you were deciding, yo, I'm about to go out and play live? Because I think that's a big piece to, you can make Modbap in the studio all day if that's what you do, but there is a whole nother level to going out and playing that stuff, man. So it's wild. I like the way you approached it though, Ali.
It was, it took a little while, because it was like, all right, how do I make 10 to 12 tracks? I go out and play 10 to 12 tracks that all don't sound like the same thing, like the same exact 4 voices. You know what I mean? So how do you take those 4 to 5 voices and change them up wildly without, you know, bringing your whole entire rig with you? You know what I mean? So I was using the voltage block clocked. And then, you know, I was like, you know what? If I unclock this and just save the states, I got 8 channels of save states that I can have for anything that I want to do. You know what I mean? So boom, I make the first beat and I'm like, all right, everything here sounds perfect. Save each state of each voice, you know, to you know, track 1, or, you know, voltage blocks, save state 1. And then what I'll do is just mess everything up again, and like none of the voices sound the same now. You know what I mean? So now I'm making a whole different beat with different, you know, just by moving the voltage block knobs and changing the timbre of, you know, each voice that I have. And, you know, some things might be hooked up to the effects. Some things might be hooked up to, like, you know, just like, say,
filters or whatever.
To you know, Odessa, it would be changing like the filters on Odessa or something like that. You know what I mean? Just to change that sonic, you know, footprint or that signature. And then I just pretty much did that for like 10 to 12 tracks and had, you know, pretty much wildly different sounds for each one, because, you know, those oscillators have a range, you know what I mean? And I was able to plug in on each one of those different ranges where I needed to.
Yeah, that's dope. That's a dope way to approach that. I've even had people ask me about that, and I've like referred to them like, here's what Ali does. You know?
Yeah. And it's not all the time that like each sound is wildly different, but it's like using these different pairings of those states together give you a different sound.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I would say I approach it in a similar way, and I use either the Digitac or the Digitone as a 4-layered sequencer. So when I'm controlling the modular, I'm controlling like 4 different layers of the modular, and using different combination of filters and effects. You can carve out a lot of different tones out of, you know, a limited amount of oscillators. But then having an exterior sequencer that can save sequences, it's like it's really easy to set up a set, you know, because you can just switch scenes and all, you know, automatically your oscillators can go to a higher octave or a lower octave, or you can run it through effects and stuff. So it makes it real easy to really carve out some starts, but then you have so much to explore on the modular, so you can, you know, tweak a filter, tweak the LFO. You know, it's not exactly the same, but you always have a starting point.
And that is why I will not perform live, because I will have one beat running for 2 days, brother. It's not
right. That's the one.
Yeah.
No doubt.
And I
Amazing.
mean, I really agree with Shiro because like my MPC is the backbone of everything. Like for those shows that I play out, like all the sequences come from that. So, you know, like he said, it allows you to have your base sequence, but also like with the voltage block, I was able to change up the elements in that Eurorack a lot more easier, you know, because the MPC I have doesn't have the CV in and out and stuff. So I just use, you know, a MIDI to CV converter, which I feel like, I don't know, it's a lot more flexible for me.
Yeah,
Doing it that way.
So let me ask you, when you say you save the states in the voltage block, what do you mean by that?
All right, so on the voltage block, if you move any of the 8 sliders and then hit save and then the first button, right? The first, you know, the first black button, it'll save all 16 of those slider states to save state 1. So there's 16 buttons, 16 save states. And if you move the button for any one or the slider, you know, if you hold the button and move the slider, it allows you to like adjust only that one step. So, you know, so I'm not, so taking it out of steps, I just use them as states instead of 16 steps. I'm using
and what you mean by that is that, like, so you got your 8 sliders or whatever, and they have output voltages. So you can connect that to like the filter cutoff. You can connect that to different timbres on different modules. And so you're basically changing the preset or the preset state of each of those modules every time you change the state on the voltage block.
Right. So one of those black buttons on the voltage block can control 8 things. And you can have 16 states of 8 things pretty much.
Wow.
That's a master's class. You can do a for real class in that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so pretty much it's just like, all right, so button 1, you got 8 voltage states to save, and you tweaked 8 things, and you're like, yeah, I like that. Save state 1. You know what I mean? And then you go to the next beat, and you like changing 8 things, and you're like, all right, bet I like that. Save state 2, and then you flip back to beat 1 on your MPC, and then hit recall state 1, and it goes back to beat 1.
Okay, I get it. Okay, that's tight.
So all I was doing in the set is I would, you know, on the MPC, you can change to the next program, and it'll keep playing, and then that next program will automatically kick in, right? So on beat, all I'm doing is hitting load. All right, save state 2, boom, right when the beat drops in, and then all of the oscillators change up to that new, you know.
Yeah, that's tight.
Yeah, that's dope. Yeah, when we was getting ready for that NAMM show, crap, was it 2020? That was the last time anybody could go outside.
Yeah, that was early 2020.
Early to January.
January.
So we was getting ready for that at the little Modbap NAMM house, and I saw Ali doing that. I'm like, hey, what you doing? What is this? Over here. So yeah, that's a dope way. But let me also ask too. I got some questions, but honestly, just in the flow of the conversation, people will say, "Yo, there is easier ways to add synthesis to your hip hop production. Why modular?"
You have full control. That's what it is for me.
Yeah, it's like the difference between having an automatic car or 5-speed.
Right.
I would say, why do you do beats? If you ask that question, I would ask that person, why? First, it's all about your sound. You see what I mean? Like the reason you do beats contains the answer to everything, right? Like, do you want to do beats to sound like the previous guy? I mean, that's an answer. You could say yes. And then, you know, in that case, you can do beats on your phone. Like you get the app, it sounds legit, right? But then I would say if you want to sound like you, which is 99% of beat makers out there, I mean, you already know.
I mean, modular, just the whole exploration of it, man, it's fun, you know? It's just tweaking knobs and just hearing, you know, just having an idea, hitting the knob, and then it totally does something totally different from what you wanted to do, but it's still dope.
Still dope, right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't beat that feeling.
I've never been more in the zone in like making sounds and like just feeling it than when I have like with modular. Like I can turn one knob and just get a vastly different sound or something totally different.
Right.
And then, you know, just on a computer, it's not the same. You don't have that level of control, that level of I want to do this, you know. I think I said this before, but when you're using like a synth, you have to think how that person or that team made that synth, and you can't break away from it. You have to follow their thought process from start to ending. Like with this stuff, you make up your own process.
And you know what's crazy about this thing, man? It definitely teaches you how to mix your music better because you're dealing with frequencies so much that you can hear anything crazy in a mix now. You know, you can mix. Oh man, my mixes sound so much better just because I'm tweaking filters and oscillators and doing all this stuff all the time. You know?
Yeah.
Definitely
tunes
your ear.
Of course, the easy way isn't really the best way, I think.
Yeah.
So there's of course there's easy ways to add synthesis to your beats or in your production, but why should you take the easy way? You know,
I mean, and I agree with you. And this is another thing I want to say. I've been able to come up with things I would have never came up with on the computer.
Oh, yeah. Emphasis on that. Put a couple exclamations right there.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Exactly.
There's a point I wanted to bring earlier, and then we got caught up with the flow.
Oh, no problem. Go for it.
Like, you know, Corey, you said at some point when you transition from being, you know, a traditional hip hop producer to being a Modbap producer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a thing, right? But I think there's lots of people out there who ask questions, whatever. They start both as a hip hop producer and modular artist or synthesis, whatever the word is. So that's a lot. I feel like I feel for these people. I'm like, I'm not sure it's the best idea in the world, right?
Yeah.
we all started by just sampling drums, loops. Then, you know, after years of doing that, you know, you buy like maybe a mono synth, bass lines, couple of leads here and there, and then I'm sure all of us we put at least a decade doing that, right? Playing mono synth, maybe a couple poly synth. And then we moved on to modular. That I think is to take into consideration, right? Like starting it all from scratch. You know, if you can do that, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying it's
but that is a lot to take on.
I mean, that goes back to what Corey was saying: is if you a dope hip hop producer already, like you can make
exactly. But if you're not a producer at all. Wow, like that's
that's heavy.
That's a lot.
Because you know, the other thing too about doing this whole aesthetic of Modbap is you draw from what you learn just making hip hop. You know what I'm saying? You draw from like it's like you're exploring and you're able to kind of go, you know, a little abstract with things or maybe way abstract with things, but you know, there's something to the idea of like I love to make a soundscape and then chop it and flip it. You know what I'm saying? Like
infinite sample material.
It's like the infinite record. Like James Brown told people in the movie, or he was pointing at all the instruments. Was like, "What is that?" And the dude was like, "A horn." It was, "Well, this is a trombone." He's like, "Nope, that's a drum on the one." And I look at all this, just everything's vinyl. You know what I'm saying? Because ultimately you capture it, and then you got all the more material to go on. But you can't even begin to think like that if you're not coming from a perspective of like those building blocks of just making hip hop beats, you know.
Like how we traditionally, like when we build a drum kit, you know, a lot of times everybody has their secret recipe on how they make kicks and how you can reinforce kicks. And like with Modbap, we can reinforce kicks with, you know, oscillators, envelopes, and filters, you know, to like pretty much make our own kick, make our own version of an 808, you know, to layer with the sample or to even layer with a drum module. You know, so you can still take those same traditional techniques and just bring them over to modular. But you have to have that vocabulary first.
Right. You got to have the vocabulary.
Yeah, because even if I make a whole composition without sampling, like just my Eurorack sounds and like my MPC, I'll drop out the drums and just record the melody by itself. Just so I can take that and throw it back into like Morphogene or like in the Squid or something, and just chop it up and do other stuff with it.
So you're still using that same traditional language and techniques. It's just applying it to something new and limitless.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's real. Yeah, because it's real dope to take little audio snippets or long audio snippets, store it into some Eurorack sampler and do weird stuff to it. Here's the thing about when I've literally had people ask me, like, why go through all the trouble of all of that, plugging in a bunch of stuff and looking like a fire is gonna jump off. I've literally told them, like, listen, when you're dealing with modular, you got creative possibilities that don't exist anywhere else.
Yeah.
Man, people ask those type of questions, man. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Corey, but people who ask those type of questions are not creative producing people like that. You know what I mean? You do it because you know where you going with it. You know what it's about to be, man. How can that's like a lazy person. Well, it's quicker to do it that way.
Right.
Fuck quicker. I want to do it this way. It feels better. You know what I mean?
That's right. Right.
The easy way.
And you can really, really, truly open up and express yourself. And then there's, if you just mention one word, modulation alone, like the idea of modulation in Eurorack, that stuff you just can't do in other places.
There's another aspect to it, of course, the price of modules. I mean,
that's true. Yeah,
it's quite a lot of money if you building a big system. So that I'm teaching a lot of young electronic producers for my job, and they only have their laptops and they produce everything on their laptops. And I really try to convince them to at least try to use some hardware at some point, But they're like, yeah, I would love to, but I'm broke. Maybe later.
That's a real thing. It's real. I mean, modular has that's the barrier to entry, kind of. The cost of things. It's a reality. But I mean, at the same time, I can remember being back in the day, like I would sleep over at the homeboy's house because he had an MPC. I couldn't afford no MPC. I took some money from my student loans and bought a S20. And I was like, this ain't no damn MPC. You know what I'm saying? So you get better when you can get better. But, it's dope to think about exploring those things. This is an interesting question from the Daydream Sound. It says, do you think Modbap is beginning to gain traction amongst traditional boom bap producers?
I would say no.
Yeah.
they don't embrace it. Rest in peace to Ross G. I was trying to get Ross G into modular. Yeah. And that brother, I mean, if you want to talk about coloring outside the lines of hip hop, Ross G did that, rest in peace.
Yeah.
But when I tried to like get him to explore the modular, he's like, no, y'all crazy for doing that. And to get Ross G to say something's crazy is crazy.
No doubt.
So yeah, a lot of traditional producers are definitely not embracing it.
Yeah, it's still early. It still feels really new. Like I can remember having my brother-in-law came through, and that's a whole story in itself. I just met my brother-in-law and my sister, but talk to dad about that. But anyway, my brother-in-law came through, and he makes beats too, and we both from Chicago. He came in, he saw this big old thing, and he was like, bruh, I don't even put a blanket over that while I'm here.
That's crazy.
He was not about that. You know what I mean? So I think I definitely hear from people that are curious about it and want to, like it's inspiring to see some of the stuff that the people in this panel, especially, and other people too, are doing. And so I think I see people starting to lift the eyebrow.
I think it takes a breakthrough, a personal breakthrough.
Mm-hmm.
I think it takes for you to be tired of using VSTs or tired of like your current production style. I'm not going to say tired, but like you want to try something different. You want something new,
Break that routine.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier. But when I started the Syntablism, doing Syntablism and being kind of tired of chopping the samples like I've been doing for 25 years. And then when I discovered I could attach the turntable, connect the turntable and the mixer, and and scratched basically the whole patch with the setup I've been scratching with for all these years. That was the moment I got into modular. You know, before I was a little bit scared to get into modular, but that was for me. That was the personal breaking point.
And I think that's what it is, man. A lot of people are kind of intimidated because, you know, the rigs look crazy, the chords look crazy. But I say get a little semi-modular joint, learn some basic patching, you know, work your way up to a little rig, you know what I mean? Don't try to, you know, jump out the window. I still can't do that.
I think we all did that. We all started with something small, and then we started after we started with something small. It's like, okay, I need this, and then after you got that, it's like, all right, I need this. And then
that's why we need to tell the cats who want to get started, because they think we probably just jump right into these big ass rigs. No, we started with something small. We had to work our way up to that.
Yeah, I definitely recommend like semi-modular and that kind of thing.
Right.
Something small like O-coasts and you know what I'm saying? Those kind of things are real dope for jumping in.
Like I still use my SV1 in 90% of my music. You know what I mean?
That's one thing I noticed during the chat, and it kind of like backtracks a little bit about like what's the perfect approach to Modbap. And talking to all of y'all, I kind of see the perfect approach is like already having a machine or an interface. Like for Kypski, it was the turntable. You know, Ali had the MPC, Corey had the MPC. It's like you have full and total control of that. Like you know how to use that. So like if you get basic understanding of modular, but then you're controlling it with an environment that you've been using for 10 plus years, you know, that kind of makes a big difference.
And to that point, I literally just told somebody this. I don't so much feel like I brought hip hop into modular so much as I feel like I brought modular into my hip hop environment. You know,
that makes sense.
The box that I'm using, I know that box. I know this environment that I'm using it in, and now it's just a matter of how do you interface. But once you kind of figure out how to interface with, you know, whatever modular stuff you got, then you can start to, I'm excited because I added a modular bass line to my joint or an ARP. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a big part of the journey because you start with this semi-modular, right? So like a Mother 32, you got a MIDI import on there. All right, I can play this thing. But then when you get a real oscillator, it's like, all right, how do I interface this with my MPC now? You know, you gotta. That's why you gotta do your research. So you know, I get a lot of like you know, DMs like, oh, what do you think I should start with? I want to build a rig. I got this much money. What do I get? I'm like, dude, I can't really tell you. You have to research. You know what I mean? Like,
that's a frustrating answer, but it's a real answer though.
Yeah.
That because I can say I remember thinking like that. Well, I don't really get no answers about how to do this or what to get into, especially this. You know, your rack doesn't have a lot of documentation until maybe recently. It's starting to become, but then even more so if you coming from a space where this don't even exist in that space, then it's even more like ain't no answers.
You know, I would say though, buying a used zero cost is the best bet. Like when people ask me, you know, they say, you know, stop with the, you know, the wisdom bullshit. Give me a true, real answer. I go to the store. What do I get? I might say go online, try to find a used zero cost. You know, you can resell it. It's not gonna cost an arm and a leg. That's doable.
Right.
And that would be my advice. Like I tell like people, you know, I'm closer to, I can help a little bit. I tell them, listen, from my point, if you don't like the zero cost, if you think it sucks, it's a terrible experience, Modular is not for you. If you think zero cost is dope, entertaining, a very fun way to do music, start saving up because the rig is coming.
That's right.
Hey, that's what happened. Ben, he came to my house. He brought his Ocos. He told me, he said, check this little thing out. And I was like, yo, this is fucking crazy. But a couple of days later, I had me one. And I was just patching, going crazy. And I was like, you know what? I need one more little modular to go with it. And once I said that, it was over.
Game over.
Rabbit hole.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yo, we got a couple minutes. I love to continue this conversation, but because it's a part of a larger sort of thing, we're going to end on time. But Kypski, I want to give you a minute or so just to talk about Syntablism, because I think that's, you know, it's brilliant, and it's something that I think, you know, would do the same thing that Eurorack did for me in my hip hop productions. I think Syntablism will do that for DJs that might be, you know, searching for that next thing, that next gateway.
Yeah, I really hope so. It's, you know, the Syntablism thing is, I think it's even a smaller community than the Modbap community right now, but that's okay. And I'm also trying to grow this community together with Luigi, who originally kind of invented the first Syntablism patch. There's a guy, Luigi's from Germany, from Saarland, but he's not. He's doing it as a hobby, opposed to I am doing it as an artist, and I'm releasing tracks, Syntablism tracks, be it Modbap or techno, but it's all Syntablism. And yeah, it's still really exciting. I've been doing it for a few years now, and
but what's dope is you have a rich history as a turntablist. Like that's actually where I first met you, was through turntablism.
Exactly, that's how we met. Years ago. Yeah. Like we're the OGs. Turntablism OGs.
Yeah.
But and I think it in a logical way it adds to the Modbap.
Does this a part of that?
I mean,
that's a big branch off the tree for real.
Yeah. I mean, where's the turntablist? It's in Syntablism. There's your scratch DJ.
How does that work? How does that work? How does that work? I can't even put my brain on here.
Okay, well, in short, I'm not going to explain the whole. I mean, in short, it's the turntable sends out pitch CV through either a pressed tone, like a pitch, like a fixed pitch, like a sine wave, or on the vinyl. But rather, I use the phase controller. Which also sends out pitch. Is the wireless controller, and that pitch CV gets buffered through a buffered mold, and then it's strong enough to send anywhere into the system. And the crossfader of I used to use a scratch DJ mixer to do to convert the crossfader cuts into gate signals.
Wow.
But now I have this module by Ginkgo Synthese, which is called the Battle. Which has a gate fader inside, and it's actually a really good crossfader. So that's the first real gate fader in Eurorack. It's the Battle by Ginkgo Synthese.
Yo,
that's tight.
I don't mean to cut you, but we are running 1 minute long, and we got to get out of here. So, I want to thank everybody for coming through, and
thank you.
Another one in the bag, and I appreciate all y'all. It's a lot of heat on here, and let's keep building, man.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Corey.
Thanks for having us, bro.